Good evening. Welcome to our explorations in Savitri with our brother Alok. Today we continue with Canto 7, The Descent into Night. We are on page 212, about, 6-7 lines from the bottom.
Yes, and we had read some very interesting mystic lines with deep mystic import.
Yes.
These two lines where we had stopped. In a mud goblet poured the Bacchic wine. And as we know, the Bacchus, they were, Greek mystics who were followers of the cult of Ananda, if it can be called a cult. In India, it would be either something similar would be like a left-hand tantric path, or even the path of Sufi mysticism. There are two different things, but where there is bhakti and
With the
ananda,
dance
dance and
dervishes.
music and joy. They celebrate life, and they were given a thrisis, as those who had arrived at some kind of a experience. It was a genuine path, very bold and strong path. The closest that can come, these paths have gone into obscurity, but even bhakti, where you are filled with the joy and delight of the divine. So they were given the thrisis that, such and such person is the actual priest or a, realized person. So Sri Aurobindo says, nevertheless, this falsehood, what it does, it pours that wine in a mud goblet. It's not worthy. So yes. He's referring to there is a true ananda and there is a vital joy and a vital pleasure which imitate it.
The Bacchic wine is a delight.
It's a delight, it's somras, it's ananda.
Yes.
But instead of the true somras, which comes by an intense inner movement, this was something which was imitative. So he
poured into
a mud goblet. We can even say that the mud goblet is the unpurified, untransformed, not transformation is a big word, but unpurified earth nature, which has not really gone through the fire of purification. So it's just a mud goblet in which that wine is poured, and obviously the results are very poor. The other is to a
satyr.
Satyr is, of course, a drunken fellow who just, it's, people who are just having fun, taking enjoyment in pleasure, and they
give the thyrsus to them.
And they imitate as if they are on the path of Ananda. I am in Ananda, but it's not Ananda. It's nothing but vital joy and pleasure, which is mistaken for the true Ananda. So basically, he's referring to how falsehood imitates truth. So there is a true spirituality and there is an imitative spirituality, and we should be very careful about it. Then it continues in various, we read about sculpture, and now he'll speak about art and painting. Impure, sadistic with grimacing mouths, grave, foul inventions, gruesome and macabre, came televisioned from the gulfs of night. So already, I think.
And he uses that word
television.
We were talking the other day, when did television come to India? It must have been in the late 40s.
No, later than that. 60s. 60s, probably 70s.
So Sri Aurobindo knew it from...
Probably 70s. See, I had joined my college, 76. And around that time, the first television, and I still remember there was only national television with Krishi Darshan. So maybe late 60s or early 70s. Definitely not early 60s.
But in America, I know it was probably
it came in
40s
or 50s.
Early 50s.
The invention was in 40s, but it came in 50s, yes.
But Sri Aurobindo saw it.
Yes, and what use it will be put to. So, gulfs of night. Her craft ingenious in monstrosity, impatient of all natural shape and poise, a gape of nude exaggerated lines, gave caricature a stark reality. See, we unthinkingly just appreciate cubism and things like that. Mother was not fond of it. As he said, it's a degradation because after the First World War, that's when Picasso and all this cubist movement, modern art started.
Yes.
And around the same time, you see postmodernism, where you deconstruct everything with the mind, analyze it, break it into parts, and reassemble it. And when you reassemble, you think you are improving upon the art of nature. But what you make is a caricature. You see many of these
it's a caricature.
Yeah,
It's a
you see a
distortion.
leg somewhere up above a horse's mouth, and suddenly this is gross distortion. Whereas the purpose of art is to reveal beauty which you cannot see. That's why there is art. Because when we cannot see the beauty which is hidden behind the form, then true art brings it out. That's how Sri Aurobindo is defined. The purpose of art is to reveal what nature hides, the beauty that is hidden. So we can't see it. So, when you see that art, you feel the delight. That's why it's connected with delight. But this kind of an art form in the name of realism, but actually it's not realism, it shows a dark side of reality which anyways anybody with crude senses can see. But what is hidden from us? The beauty of life. So here he's saying that the natural form, they were, broken down.
And it's the same thing in poetry.
Same thing in poetry, same thing in many, as I said, postmodern thought. It is
Yes.
pull down great things from their heights and using analytical language deconstructed them, and then it builds it up according to its own theory. So all this movement came post 2 wars, which it was necessary to create a flat ground so that now a new creation can come. But there are many people who have flown into it, unfortunately. Look at it, impatient of all natural shape and poise. There is a beauty in what nature has created. Like the great Greeks in sculpture and painting, they brought out what is there, but brought it out in such a beautiful way. A gape of nude, exaggerated lines gave caricature a stark reality, and art parades of weird, distorted forms.
There it is.
And gargoyle masks obscene and terrible. So these gargoyle masks are there in, like face or some animal faces, and they are put in many of these castles, etc. For they are like outlet of water, and actually it looks very odd, very horrifying. We have one,
It's always.
something from the mouth, water is coming out, and you are supposed to drink it. I mean, it's not a aesthetically pleasing thing, but people.
You see it on the front of museums.
Yes,
and all
you see it in
kinds
the front of
these
museums.
gargoyles.
Trample to tormented postures that don't sense. So something similar, drugs do it. They tear away the senses and they reconstruct the senses. So like LSD and all, that's why people took to them, because they thought it's something giving them a different experience. Different, yes, but of a dark kind. An inexorable evil's worshipper, she made vileness great and sublimated filth. A dragon power of reptile energies and strange epiphanies of groveling force and serpent grandeurs, couching in the mire, drew adoration to a gleam of slime.
What a line.
What a line. And this, it's all, inspired by the animal side of man, and it uplifts them. There are horror shows, and people love horror shows. You're surprised. And they enjoy it, because if you are very tamasic, you need a very, very strong stimulus. So many of these art forms are, true art should be very subtle, very soft, gentle. It shouldn't be like, very glaring into the eyes. Something very beautiful, gentle, harmoniously blending with everything. And when you see it, it's not about a form, but what it creates inside your consciousness. Something similar, but people like horror. Same with movies. Some of these French films are very nice, very soft, very gentle, very subtle, very profound. But on the contrary, there are some loud music, loud movies, loud actions, and they are not, they are right inspired from the vital.
And what is extraordinary is that the two most prolific subjects today are vampires and horror films.
Yes, horror films. And pornography, which we Other day I was watching these statistics on the news channel. They were really concerned that 50% of pornographic traffic is in India. And of course, world over, 97% of money comes through watching pornography. It's such a sad state. And all this, again, in the name of freedom. So now, freedom is a bogey, but actually it's not freedom, it's a slavery to all this, the darkest impulses.
I have young people writing to me all the time. Can you do a series on pornography?
Well,
it's desire. And
it's there. It has to be put in its place, and its place is very dark and narrow. But nevertheless, like I mentioned last time, the problem of these things is not to take a moralist standpoint, but the problem is they kill your higher. It's the same energy. You can drag it to the abyss or you can uplift it. So I have seen people who are very, because as a psychiatrist, people do come, and I have seen that people who are very indulgent in pornography, their emotions get, stifled because they cannot harden. They cannot they cannot really love because everything becomes for them a sex object. So I think more than this is not really required. A series is not required. This is good enough. And we just read it, Shubhindo. Everything is there in Savitri, no? So
yes.
He spoke of that, nude parades and all this. All nature pulled out of her frame and base was twisted into an unnatural pose. Repulsion stimulated inner desire. So this is why
interesting.
Strong. It's like there are people who cannot feel love unless they feel hate and jealousy. They're not aware that there is love because love has to be, it cannot be just something gentle. It's just, at one place, mother says, "My child, most of you cannot even feel divine love. If you feel it, you will feel it is very cold and impersonal." But it's the most powerful love because you don't understand love unless it throws itself out into, very loud drama and emotions and words. Otherwise, you don't understand it is love. So something similar here. Inner desire. Repulsion stimulated inner desire. Agony was made a red spiced food for bliss. So this is what, those torture chambers. And there are people who, and that's why one thing, there is a practical advice here. When people who in the name of media, they show these things like, suicide and now of course there are a lot of laws which prevent, you can't show it. But they used to show graphic pictures. And what is worse is that some of these things people actually forward.
In India?
Everywhere. India also. Now there are laws which regulate it. But I'll give an example. The other day, WhatsApp, somebody, you don't know what it is and you click. And there is a snake crawling up the screen. Now, who is forwarding all this? A nice person from the ashram. If you have seen this, just delete it. This is not something worth forwarding. Because you are forwarding falsehood. Mother has said even lies and all you should not forward because you are forwarding falsehood. Such distorted things, horror things, it's not something, it's they kill the senses, pervert the things inside. But this is how, agony was made a red spiced food for bliss. Like olden times people used to go hunting, chase a, prey and then they kill it. And there was a reason why they would do it because, the prey will become, a lot of blood is rushing and it will become fat and the kill is, it's a very, Genghis Khan who would make elephants fall inside a ditch and he would create a ditch and cover it up. So when elephants would unwittingly fall and then when they would scream, he used to enjoy it like music. So, there have been this kind of a consciousness which is right from the night. Hatred was trusted with the work of lust. So love is nowhere to be seen. They lust and along with this hatred because that's how they can go. And torture took the form of an embrace. A ritual anguish consecrated death. So even sacrifice of animals and earlier human beings.
Human beings.
Yeah, even human beings. Ritual. It's like a worship. And consecration is going on. But what kind of a thing was being consecrated? Ritual anguish consecrated death.
Yeah, there was
even now in in Islam as it is practiced today, you have these two types of sacrifice of an animal, poor animal. It's called haram, something halal and probably haram. One is you cut it slowly, and the other jhatka, halal and jhatka. So this cutting slowly. I mean, how agonizing it is. And to start with, why do these things? They're so crude, so brutal. But it's done as a major religious festival. Even in India, people do it sometimes now, in some of the Devi pujas of a very dark kind. But of course, in India, you regard this as something very dark. Tribals do it, not like a sophisticated lot.
I was in Cozumel, and across from Cozumel there's a place called Isla Mujerda. And that's where they used to do human sacrifice. The moment we entered there, you could feel it now, 100 years later. You can feel that vibration.
Yes. So, he has seen all these, so, we can imagine what Sri Aurobindo has seen, experienced, and incidentally, these are not just thoughts. Sri Aurobindo, mother, once writes, when the disciple says, I am having nightmares, mother says, oh my child, I am having them every day for months together. Mother is having nightmares. He says, horrors. All of them are coming to me. Then he talks about this leftist Maoist movement. He says, they say that, there is a book which has come out where they say revolution flows through the barrel of a gun. Mother says, it must be that. She's experiencing all those nuclear bombs and hatred in human consciousness. She was just absorbing it. So, nightmares of the divine. Worship was offered to the undivine. So naturally, who would come and receive such a worship? Not the original Kali, but the Kali of Virampatnam, which mother said, where they used to offer chicken. And she was nothing else but a very dark being. And when mother was crossing, she came and met us. Because they can recognize. They said, I see you have a lot of power. Can you make a pact with me? So if you give me something of your power, in turn, I will give you whatever people are offering, some percentage. Mother said, I am not interested. I mean, for her, all these are like ants. And a new aesthesis of Inferno's art that trained the mind to love what the soul hates. So, the soul will never be happy with these things. But this is it. And there are schools of thought. I mean, I was saying modernist painting, you'll see accolades in praise of it. And unthinking people just follow it. That yes, because it's the fashion. But honestly, if you see it from here, you'll feel it's this cannot be something high. Imposed allegiance on the quivering nerves and forced the unwilling body to vibrate. This is the loud music, the heavy metal, and all this you can see. Too sweet and too harmonious to excite. In this regime that soiled the being's core, beauty was banned. The heart's feeling dulled to sleep. This is what I was mentioning. That the deeper feelings, the softer, it was dull to sleep.
It's exactly
they are too sweet. So, beauty should not be there. And that kind of music, blaring and,
This is exactly what you said.
So,
and cherished in their place. Sensations, thrills.
Yes, and cherished in their place, sensations, thrills. The world was probed for jets of sense appeal. It's not a smooth rhythmic flow, but suddenly, you will see in these music forms, sudden beats, loud beats, which are not in sync with the rest. And that's what makes it special. This kind of heavy metal music, what is the difference between the classical rock and heavy metal? This is one of the differences. So, unlike classical rock, there will be sudden, I can't imitate it, don't wish to do it, but sudden loud note.
It's almost an undercurrent of
pulse. Yes, but there will be sudden, yes. Similarly, in art form, suddenly something will be very glaring, not in harmony with the rest. So, these are not basically a kind of disharmony, jets of sense appeal. Here, cold material intellect was the judge. Now comes philosophies. Postmodernism and modernism, deconstructions, cold material intellect. So it declared that Krishna 40% existed, 60% didn't exist as per the data available. And all the scholars have finally decided by consensus, and that's the thing going on in academic circle, that people have made a cult of Krishna, but actually he was probably a cowherd boy, that's all.
Well, Sri Aurobindo says somewhere that they have, I think he says the Germans have proven that Christ never existed.
So, cold material intellect. Also, regarding the gospel and the Puranas, they say they are a forgery. And then he myth and forgery. And then Sri Aurobindo says, then thanks for the forgeries and the myths. Because they have saved mankind. So, but this is our cold material intellect. How can it be possible? What is all this, nonsense? Monkey flying into air, all these stories. Instead of trying to go deeper into it. And needed sensual prick and jog and lash, that its hard dryness and dead nerves might feel some passion and power and acrid point of life. You see, this is the problem with these so-called scholars. Cold material intellect and emotions are gone. This is the asura actually in man. And quite naturally, because the heart has been gone to sleep, their private life is very, very dark. Because the heart has gone off to sleep. So after all this theory and theorizing, the dark vital which needs a very strong stimulus, that comes out. A new philosophy theorized evil's rights. So we know what philosophies are these. Gloried in the shimmering rot of decadence, or gave to a python force persuasive speech. We know Hitler, how he spoke. Python force, something which takes people in its grip and, completely turns them towards evil paths, hypnotized. And armed with knowledge, the primeval brute. Look at Rajneesh, what happened, Armed with knowledge, the primeval brute. So he gave his own very interesting theory. Unless your desires are satisfied, you cannot really seek the greater transcendence. So now, it's a you have been put into a path which is an impossible path.
Yes.
Because you can never really satisfy desires.
Mother makes it very
very,
clear.
very clear. Yes. So Sri Aurobindo's one aphorism is there where he says either by perfect satisfaction or perfect renunciation. So mother was asked to comment and he says this Sri Aurobindo's sense of humor because you cannot do the former. Because it will keep on, or temporarily it may become quiescent, but it will come back again. So, again temporarily quiescent comes back again. You cannot perfectly satisfy it.
It's never enough.
Yeah, it's never enough. And so, people, they were so carried away by his logic. I remember somebody gave me once one tape.
This is
Rajneesh, long back. He said, now, after 15 minutes, I said, please, this is not philosophy, this is not truth, this is all a perversion, nothing else. And this is long back. I had just started reading Sri Aurobindo, but it was so obvious that the man is fooling everybody using his logic and his mind, which made it worse. Because, he had a very developed intellect, very powerful intellect. And through that, he put a noose around, because people are impressed. Look at it, he has read so much and others have not read. He was completely distorting. Some of the stories were not even true. And they were his stories, it was so obvious. But then people were very impressed because people have not read, they have not thought for themselves, they have not gone deep inside. So they are very impressed by listening to anybody speak anything about anyone. So this is how theorized evil's rights. Gloried in the shimmering rot of decadence, or gave to a python force persuasive speech, and armed with knowledge the primeval brute, over life and matter only brooding bowed, mind changed to the image of a rampant beast. It scrambled into the pit to dig for truth. My God. I am reminded of a lot of things, but I don't want to mention it. It will become a political thing. But I can just mention, there was a book once written, which created a lot of stir and controversy. And after reading the book, I had written a story. And the story was Mountain of a Mole. That how a mole digs into the bowels of Himalayas to see what lies there. Takes out some dead scrap material and says, this is the truth of the Himalayas. Instead of looking at the vast magnanimity and the grandeur and the inspiring boundlessness of the Himalayas, all that he can do is to dig into the pit and take out those dark scraplings of dead matter, which probably who knows whose corpses, and he calls it Himalaya. So digging to find something and call it truth. So
what are those lines from A God's Labor?
yes,
I have been digging deep and long mid a horror of filth and mire.
because that's what lies there.
There it is.
But then Sri Aurobindo is going with the deathless light to clear it and cleanse it.
Exactly.
But here it is digging for truth. So, and a lot of perverted sense that these people have given to many things. This is a type which exists, and it's straight about psychoanalysts. It's very clearly, theory, and that psychoanalysts who dig into the pit and declare that there is nothing but lust and anger are the primal force. So all bhakti and delight is nothing but sublimated lust. Whereas from the spiritual point of view, lust is nothing but a degraded delight. It's just the way you look at it. But that's how. So digging into the pit. In fact, this theory of psychoanalysis was built on studying morbid cases. People don't know about it. He studied basically people who were sick. So what do you expect prominently? Based on that, he gave a whole theory. The man had never come to India or never been received the touch of what true spirituality is. And based on that, psychoanalysis, when it came to India and of course went to West, people like Jeffrey Kripal and all these people, they built things about Indian thought without even ever having a contact with the sublimity. So all that they have is this. And as I said, even the stories are not true. I had read a book one chapter, because somebody asked me to comment on Wendy Doniger. I said, this is trash, throw it into the dustbin. If you want the authentic story to start with, go to the authentic story, and then you will see that it's very obvious and clear. Something so sublime. Nevertheless, that's what. And lighted its search with the subconscious flare. So there it is. It's about the, Thence bubbling rose, sullying the upper air. So after that filth, it carries the filth and throws it up, and through the filth it sees the beautiful face, divine. And says, it's not divine, it's filth. Because you have thrown the mud and you are looking through it. The filth and festering secrets of the abyss. This it called positive fact and real life. And Mother has particularly, cautioned. Even there is a letter of Sri Aurobindo. There is a tendency nowadays to pull down greatness from its height. And he cautions, this is way back in a letter, he says, if there is no more greatness left in the world to inspire men, then there will be nothing but ordinariness. So, and wherever Sri Aurobindo saw greatness, how he appreciated it, somebody asked him that, sir, you say Shakespeare was a vibhuti and all, but we have heard he had his own defects. So Aurobindo says, so what? You can be God instrument. So what if Napoleon was a debauch and Shakespeare stole deer? What does it matter? Still they had the parts which had opened to the light. That's what we have to see, that greatness and glory. But these filth gatherers cannot see it. This now composed the fetid atmosphere. Now he has entered into the heart of that darkness. A wild beast passion crept from secret night to watch its prey with fascinating eyes. Around him, like a fire with sputtering tongues, there lolled and laughed a bestial ecstasy. You see, earlier before the human sacrifice, or a black mass, when somebody has come and around him there is a ritual worship going on with the dark fire of hell, in which they are going to offer the prey. This whole description of these beings. Of course, their earthly instruments are there. Crowding. Oh, the left line. The air was packed with longings, brute and fierce. There is no sense of worship, self giving, aspiration for high and noble and sublime truths. There's only those longings, brute and fierce, crawling, crowding, and stinging in a monstrous swarm, pressed with a noxious hum into his mind. Thoughts that could poison nature's heavenliest breath. Look at it. How they could finish. That's why when Ruru is going into the pit to Hades to find out his love, Pramadvara, and to bring her out, he's moved, impelled by the power of love. But then the God of love himself appears and he says, you know what? By the time you reach there, love will die. So it's dangerous. But because you have true love, I'll give you a flower, golden rose. He says, carry it with you. This will protect you. Now, what is the protection of that flower? Love must remain, even in that domain. But they finish it in that domain, that most beautiful element in human nature. So it could poison nature's heavenliest breath.
But no one before Sri Aurobindo.
No one.
had
All
gone
the
there.
great Mahatmas, sadhus, saints, they all go up there.
Yeah.
Leave it just as it is.
Yeah.
They don't enter into it. It's not easy, of course. Forcing reluctant lids assailed the sight. Acts that reveal the mystery of hell. You don't want to see. They'll force it upon you. Watch it, see it. All that was there was on this pattern made.
I think we stop for
We stop here, yes. It's quite a bit.
There's a break.
Yes.